Good morning, or it's almost afternoon, I don't know, it's morning somewhere in the world. Okay, I'm Reverend J. Wolin, the settled minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Sarasota. I'm so glad that you are all here with me today. I want to especially welcome our guests here, both in person and on live stream on YouTube. A special hello to you. I want to let you know you're welcome at any of the events here at church. And another great way to find out about those events is to sign up. And so if you're online, there's a button that you can sign up on to get our newsletter, which comes out once a week. And right outside the door here in the sanctuary, at the table, you can sign up as well. And then what else? Oh, we have coffee. We always have coffee, a UU ritual, and desserts of some sort. And so we invite you to, after the service, to have some, and I look forward to getting to know each other. Okay, we have a special announcement video for you.
For the past 2 years, our church has sponsored a panel on embracing our differences as a way to show our commitment to racial justice. This year's panel was inspired by Nobel Prize-winning author Toni Morrison's book, The Bluest Eyes. This powerful, banned book has profoundly influenced the lives of Viola Davis and Oprah Winfrey and readers around the globe. Share your talents with your fellow UUs in our social justice programs, and remember to increase your pledge. With you, we can do more.
friend. Our opening reading today is entitled Intentions and Trust by Amy Lloyd. Today, I want to greet joy without a trace of suspicion. I want to open my eyes to the light. We have new lights here today. Without a blink of dread. I want to look at my past without a whisper of shame. I want to look at my future without a hint of fear. Today, I want to dance without pausing to think. I want to belly laugh without caring who hears. I want to open my arms and twirl in the sun until I fall breathless, free to be myself, full of joy, that I open to allow completely letting go without even a smudge of suspicion or a wink of hesitation. That is my intention. It's what I want. Now I invite you to please join me in saying our words of affirmation, which are in the order of service and will be displayed on the screen behind me. As we light this chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, we affirm our third principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual life and our congregations.
Good morning, everybody. Today's story is The Three Questions, and it's a story by Leo Tolstoy, written and illustrated by John Muth. There once was a boy named Nikolai who sometimes felt uncertain about the way to act. I want to be a good person, he told his friends, but I don't always know the best way to do that. If only I could find the answers to my three questions, he continued, then I would always know what to do. When is the best time to do things? Well, Sonia the heron replied first, to know the best time to do things, one must plan in advance. Then Gogol the monkey replied, you will know when to do things if you watch and pay attention. And Pushkin the dog said, you can't pay attention to everything yourself. You need a pack to keep watch and help you decide when to do things. So Nikolai thought for a moment, and then he asked his second question. Who is the most important one? Well, those who are closest to heaven, said Sonia, circling in the sky. Those who know how to heal the sick, said Gogol the monkey. Those who make the rules, growled Pushkin. So Nikolai thought some more, and then he asked the third question. What is the right thing to do? Oh, flying, said Sonia. Having fun all the time, said Gogol. Fighting, barked Pushkin right away. The boy thought for a long while, and he loved his friends. He knew that they were trying to help him, but their answers did not seem quite right. I know, he thought, I will ask old Leo the turtle. Surely he will know the answers I'm looking for. So Nikolai hiked up the mountain where the old turtle lived all alone, and when he arrived, he found Leo digging a garden. I have 3 questions, and I've come to ask for your help, Nikolai said. When is the best time to do things? Who is the most important one? And what is the right thing to do? Well, the turtle listened carefully, but only smiled. Nikolai saw Leo struggling and asked if he could help. So the turtle gave him his shovel and his thanks. And just as Nikolai finished digging, the wind blew wildly and rain burst from the dark clouds. The boy and the turtle were hurrying toward Leo's cottage when Nikolai heard a cry for help. Running down the path, he found a panda who had been knocked out by a falling tree branch. So carefully, Nikolai picked her up, carried her to Leo's house, tucked her into the bed to get her warm. Well, the storm continued to rage outside, but when the panda finally woke up, she said, where am I, and where is my child? So the boy ran out of the cottage and down the path. The roar of the storm was deafening with howling winds and drenching rain, but he ran farther into the forest until he found the panda's child, cold and shivering on the ground. Well, the little panda was wet and scared, but alive, so the boy carried her to Leo's home and put her in her mother's arms. Leo the turtle smiled when he saw what the boy had done. So the next morning, the storm had passed away, the sun was warm, the birds were singing, and all was well with the world. And at that moment, Sonia, Gogol, and Pushkin arrived to make sure that everyone was okay. The boy felt great peace within himself. He had wonderful friends, he had saved the panda and her child, but he also felt disappointed. He still did not have the answers to his 3 questions. But the old turtle looked at the boy. "But your questions have been answered," he said. "They have?" "Yesterday, you stayed to dig my garden, and if you didn't, you wouldn't have heard the panda's cries. Therefore, the most important time was the time you spent digging the garden. The most important one at the moment was me. And the most important thing to do was to help me. And later, when you found the panda, the most important time was the time you took to make her feel comfortable and saving her child. The most important ones were the panda and her baby. And the most important thing to do was to take care of them and make them feel safe. Remember, there is only one time important, and that time is now. The most important one is always the one you are with. And the most important thing to do is to do good for who is standing by your side. For these, my dear boy, are the answers to what is most important in this world. And this is why we are here." The end. So this story speaks to one of my spiritual practices, and that is to remember to be present in the moment, to be with those who are with me, and to care and support for those who I'm with. For when I remember to share these gifts with others, I find these gifts are shared back to me, and it fills me with joy and love. So now I invite our younger UUs to join me in the West Wing as we share with each other the things that we love. Thank you.
Centering words today from Wendell Berry, The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives might be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests, in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. And for a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. And now, as we take a moment of silence, I invite you to rest in the grace of this place and be free. So the third principle of Unitarian Universalism is acceptance of one another and the encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. So I always found the juxtaposition of those two statements really interesting. First, we accept you for just who you are, and now we want you to change. And although it is true every moment, right, we are changing in some way with every new experience and teaching that we have in the world. But in this case, I am speaking of intentional change. So being intentional about looking deep into the well of our souls and to search and constantly think about what our purpose in life is now. What does it mean to live as our best selves? What does it mean to reach our full potential as human beings? What does it mean to be in relations with others? What does it mean to create wholeness in your life and with the world? These are questions that we need to work on throughout our lives. And if we look at our lives as journeys, I think it affects how we look at that third principle. It is not just an acceptance of others for who they are, but it's also an acceptance of others for where they are, right? Where they are on their religious and spiritual journey. And this is particularly true for Unitarian Universalism, which asks us to search for truth, which asks us to question, which asks us to not rely only on ancient words, but rather asks us to incorporate wisdom from all parts of the world and all religions, wisdom from every new experience that we have in the world. We tend to create, due to that, a congregation of people here who are not only on different parts of the path, but are on different paths than we are. And we each have our own path to follow in our own way and in our own time. But we are also have to understand that we are also on an interdependent path with everyone else. So this is the paradox that makes our pluralistic religion and community challenging at times, right? We all have our own paths, but we walk our paths with other people and their paths. So let us remember to hold each other's hearts in our heart and to walk gently with each other. How can we be whole if the people we are in relationship are not yet whole? So let us be open to the notion that just maybe, we don't have all the answers, right? As our principle states, I encourage you to grow spiritually and open yourselves to new understandings of the universe and your lives as well. As the old saying goes, it is not the destination that counts, but the journey. And so I just want to be clear, when I use the word spirituality, I know it brings up different images for different people. I do not necessarily equate spirituality with supernaturalism. Unitarians in the 19th century would equate spirituality with the phrase self-culture. Now, William Ellery Channing, one of the leading 19th century Unitarian ministers and theologians, some would say really the founder of Unitarianism, defined the phrase self-culture as, and I quote, the care which every person owes to themselves to the unfolding and perfecting of their nature, end quote. So spiritual theology of self-culture is about human beings' ability to improve themselves as human beings. This improvement was not to be thought of in material terms, though, but could be accomplished through interior means of improving one's character. They would often talk about salvation by character. So spirituality, to me, is first connecting with our inner self, but then it is connecting that inner self with something that is greater than ourselves or outside of ourselves. And it happens first when we make that connection with that burning flame we have within, the thing that gives meaning to our lives. And then we bring that flame, this life force, this soul force, whatever you like to call that, to the world outside ourselves, and where we connect it with others and their meaning. We work together to create wholeness with the world. So even that is my roundabout definition for me of spirituality. But I want to say, even though I was not a Boy Scout, either literally or figuratively growing up, I made it into Boy Scouts like 3 days. I could never tie knots, so that's why I use loafers all the time now. But I know, even though I wasn't a Boy Scout, I know I went camping a few times with my wife, Jan, that if you want to keep a campfire burning long and burning strong, you have to constantly tend to that fire. And so too with the fire within ourselves, right? Our inner fire needs to be tended to, or it will go out as well. We need spiritual growth, this meaning making, this connecting to our inner self, this unfolding of our nature as a way to keep that fire lit am burning strong. Now, often when people think of spiritual growth, they think of a monk, right, sitting alone on top of a mountain, serene, peaceful, at one with the universe. And when I'm thinking of this image, I am reminded of the spiritual seeker in the movie The Razor's Edge, who alone on top of a mountain starts burning the paper from the books that he's reading as a way to keep himself heated when he runs out of wood. And he says, it's easy to be a holy man sitting alone on top of a mountain. And I like to pair that quote with my rock star theologian, Bruce Springsteen, who wrote, "It's hard to be a saint in the city." And both statements are true, right? Secluded and alone on a mountain without distractions, it is easier to quiet ourselves, our inner mind, and look inward, reflect, relax, and renew ourselves. And in our lives, even if we do travel to some secluded place, it will likely be only for a short time while on a spiritual retreat or vacation. So the question is, how can such spiritual practices help us in our day-to-day lives? How do we take that mountaintop experience and translate it into our day-to-day lives? Or really the more important question to me is, how do we make our daily lives into that mountaintop experience? And that journey is why I chose the title of today's service to be Chop Wood, Carry Water. It comes from an old Zen Buddhist story when the Zen master was once asked, "What did you do before you were enlightened?" And the master replied, "Well, I was chopping wood and carrying water for my master." "So what do you do now that you are enlightened?" asked the questioner. And the Zen master replied, "I chop wood and carry water for myself." And the questioner queried, so what's the difference? You did the same thing before that you did after. What's the difference? And the Zen master answered, "Earlier, I did it unconsciously. Now, I do it consciously." And there are two parts of this story that really resonate with me. First and foremost is the fact that, the work they were doing both before and after enlightenment is the same. So the message is that you don't need to make a major change in your life as a prerequisite to attaining enlightenment. Enlightenment or spiritual growth is not based on what we do, but rather is based on what our attitude is toward whatever it is that we are doing. And it is about being mindful in all that we do. Now, the second part of the story that resonates for me is that before enlightenment, they did their tasks because they were told to complete those tasks by someone else. But after enlightenment, they did what they did because it was their conscious choice. They took ownership of their choices and their actions. Now, how often in our lives do we see ourselves on a trajectory? We may call it destiny or fate. We may see our lives as a causal result of circumstances outside of our control. But ultimately, it is about having a mental discipline to consciously choose our own destiny and to consciously choose how we will act and how we will react to the different circumstances in our lives and how we will react and interact with others in our life. We have to be careful not to fall into the trap of acceptance of our circumstances, right? And say that everything's a fait accompli, but rather to bring that mental discipline to all that we do. Now, we can look at chopping wood as a chore and rush through it, just going through the motions and see it as tedium. And feel free to substitute tasks such as cooking, washing dishes, clothes, walking the dog for chopping wood. It's all the same thing. Or we can bring our full attention to chopping the wood or any task that we have, to bring our awareness to it, to bring our best selves to it, to bring our best skill to it, to see our purpose in every swing of the axe. And we can bring this attitude into every action that we do and in every interaction that we have. If we follow this technique, each action we do may take a little longer, but by being mindful about all that we do, we get to appreciate each moment that we have. I can tell you, like eating food, I mindfully eat. I chew like 20 times, something my mother taught me when I was a little kid. I know she was no Zen Buddhist master, but we often just rush eating and we don't even appreciate the food we're eating. And when you do mindful eating, you chew and you taste the food and the different textures, and it just becomes a focus in the present moment for every moment you are eating. Anyway, I think it's just true that if we rush through one thing without awareness, without attention, that is a type of habit we will build up in how we live our life. Right? We will develop a habit of rushing through all of our actions and interactions and relationships. We need to engage in spiritual practices to help us become more mindful of our engagement with the world. Now, one of those spiritual practices, which I think is a very important one, is the spiritual practice of generosity that we practice every week here in giving in the offering. Now, this Sunday's offering goes 100%, every dollar you give will go 100% to support Transition House, a 2013 project of the church dedicated to helping one family at a time transition out of homelessness. Our church, in partnership with Sarasota Housing Authority, who owns and maintains Transition House, supports a working family in need of safe and affordable housing. And we, as a church, furnish the home for each family, provide a rent subsidy, and help with the occasional expenses. So please be as generous as you can as the ushers pass the basket, or online you can give right on the YouTube account. There's a link to give. Let this sacred time begin. Our next reading is from the book Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh, a Buddhist Vietnamese monk. We are very good at preparing to live, but not very good at living. We know how to sacrifice 10 years for a diploma, and we are willing to work very hard to get a job, a car, a house, and so on. But we have difficulty remembering that we are alive in the present moment. The only moment there is for us to be alive. Peace is every step. The shining red sun is my heart. Each flower smiles with me. How green, how fresh all that grows. How cool the wind blows. Peace is every step. It turns the endless path to joy. And now, one more time, Fred.
The cobra is back in the basket.
Thank you, Fred, for sharing your gifts with us. Thank you. So I've observed when people act in a mindful and meaningful way, time can pass very quickly. When we are immersed in a task, we often feel that time flies by. I think about this when I am writing my sermon. All of a sudden I look up and like hours have passed and I thought it was 5 minutes. So I sort of look at that elasticity of time, being lost in time, as a concept of eternity, right? Instead of thinking of eternity in the future, right, we should think of each moment that we have as eternity. As Unitarian Henry David Thoreau said, and I quote, "You must live in the present, launch yourself on every wave, and find your eternity in each moment. We should always try to bring our attention back to the present moment and present consciousness as a way to slow things down. When everything around us is going fast and out of control, how do we accomplish this mindful engagement? Now, mindfulness is not just something you can click on and off like a light switch, and thus it is called a spiritual practice. It's something that has to be consistently practiced. It might seem awkward when you first start, and some instances will be easier than others. But the repetition of such practices of mindfulness over time, the effects are cumulative and will change your life and how you live your life. Now, my first experience with a spiritual practice was meditation. When I was in my 20s, I was having some gastric stomach problems, and I was very fortunate. I had a family doctor who, somebody would spend 30 minutes with you, getting to know you at every visit. And so, he knew I was anxious about my new job, and he goes, "Look, Jay, just take a day off of work, go to the beach, and learn how to meditate." And I have to tell you, that was the best medical advice I'd ever gotten. Which I did take a day off and go to the beach. And then I went out, as is my nature. I bought a book that was entitled How to Meditate. I didn't know anything about meditation. And actually, that book is still in print. I did check that recently. And it has changed my life for the better. I find meditation helps me focus and remain calm and to see the world as it really is. So, such as, let's say, if I'm in meditation and all of a sudden I hear a car horn honking. Now my mind goes, "Oh, why did that car horn? It messed up my meditation. I was doing so good. I was focusing, and now like it's messed up. Why do people have to honk there?" And I go on in my mind with this story about this car honking its horn. And all I have to do is say to myself, that is a car horn honking, and go back to meditation. I think we do that. We make up these stories in our mind that aren't true. Like we have all these things that built up over the years, and we have to train our mind to focus on just what is. We have no idea why that car horn honks, right? So I just find breathing and focusing on my breath. Whenever I'm in a situation that's stressful, or the wind is blowing, right? The storm is raging, and that could be anything. That's a metaphor. I just take 3 deep breaths just to center myself, and it brings me right back to that feeling I have after 35 years. Now, sometimes it doesn't. No matter how, even after 35 years, I sometimes live. So perfection is not the goal, right? Just practice. It's always about practicing so that you can bring it into your day-to-day living. So breathing and focusing on the breath allowed me to open myself up to the greater possibilities of the universe. And by going inward, I was enabled to go outward. Meditation helped me connect my conscious mind with my unconscious mind. And by connecting with my inner self, I then became more comfortable with myself. And once I became comfortable with myself, I didn't feel defensive if somebody disagreed with me about something, right? It allowed me to listen to others with an open and curious heart and mind. And so my second experience with spiritual practices, most surprisingly to me, was walking a labyrinth. And it's become an extremely meaningful spiritual practice for me. It's deepened my life and my ethical life. Friends of mine in my home church of Orlando built this full-size labyrinth on the grounds, and out of respect for my friends' hard work, I walked it. I really did not expect to gain anything from it, honestly, but yet in every step I took, I found a metaphor for life. You can see the picture up there, right? All right, do we take shortcuts, Or do we follow the path? Do we finish what we start? When I was halfway through, it was like, oh, I have to walk all the way back out again. I could just cross over here, but no. Right? How do we avoid obstacles, right? There happen to be branches there or bugs or whatever. Where are we heading? You can see it's lots of twists and turns, just like life. And we need to continue to see where it leads. And for some unexplainable reason, that this is why to me I say life is a mystery at times to me, the labyrinth continues to have this powerful impact on me. Now, of course, one doesn't need a labyrinth. I just want to say that. It just takes intentionally spending time on a consistent basis to help us on the path towards mindfulness. There's no one right or wrong or left practice, right? We each have to find our own way. And I encourage you to try different practices to see what works for you. And that is my goal for this church, to create an environment where different spiritual practices can flourish. We already have 3 meditation groups I know going here, and I know there are other practices that happen throughout the grounds during the week. So although I've mentioned a couple of personal solitary spiritual practices do not have to be solitary. In fact, I will tell you my meditation, although I started solitary, I met with sanghas that were created in pretty much every UU church that I belonged to. There was a sangha there that I could meditate in. But I would consider even practices like coming to worship every week, chalice groups, choir, to be a communal spiritual practice if you treat it as such. There are physical spiritual practices such as yoga, tai chi, jogging, or running, for example. We can experience spiritual practices around creativity, such as gardening, cooking, artwork, right? And I'll tell you about artwork. It's very funny. I started this a while back. If you're Facebook friends with me, and you're all welcome to if you want. Most every night I post some piece of artwork. Because about 5 years ago, there was a challenge, post artwork every night or something for 30 days. And what I found, it was really meaningful. So now every night, even now 5 years later, as a spiritual practice before I go to bed, I search and look at artwork for just about 10 minutes. And then if I find one that really moves me, I post it online on Facebook. And it just is a reminder to me of, before I go to bed, of all the beauty that is in the world and the diversity of beauty. Art comes in so many different forms and styles. And so you can find your own way to find that for you. But in order for any of these practices to have an impact, we have to do them consistently, with intention, and with mindfulness. And the more we practice mindfulness, the more mindfulness becomes part of our everyday life, in all of our actions, including chopping wood and carrying water. Intentional living will change how we see ourselves. It will change how we see the world. It will, in fact, allow us to see ourselves and the world for as it is. The Buddha was once asked by a group of seekers of enlightenment, "Who are you?" And he answered them, "I am awake." Now, it is ironic that some in our country use the concept of being awake as a pejorative statement. But I ask you to be awake in every moment of your life, to be awake to all that is going on around you, including, that is just a beeping sound that I hear. I have no idea what it is. To be awake to the suffering in the world, to be awake to all the wonders of this world, to be awake to the wonder that is this world, and to be awake to the uniqueness and wonder that you are, and the potential of what still may be. And so to do so, I encourage you to keep your inner lights burning, burning long and burning strong, so that we may bring our lights to the world. So be mindful, and may it be so. And now I invite you to rise in body and or spirit for our closing hymn. I've got Peace Like a River, verses 1, 2, 3, and 6. Closing words are Henry David Thoreau, as a single footstep will not make a path on the earth, so a single thought will not make a pathway in the mind. To make a deep physical path, we walk again and again. To make a deep mental path, we must think over and over the kind of thoughts we wish to dominate our lives. And so please join me in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you all for your presence here today. Thank you.